Hi there, welcome to SportsCenter from the nation's capital. I'm Scott Van Pelt. Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs roll to their 10th straight. Tim Legler will join us in a bit to break down the hottest team in the league. Tatum and Brown end up in the same category as Bird and McHale with the Celtics. And some developing news regarding the Rams' standout wide receiver, Puka Nacua. We begin with the show once again put on Victor Wembanyama. He is in a category of his own at the moment, it seems. They'd won 9 straight entering Wednesday. That's the best. 13 in the first half. First Spurs player with 25 and 10 in any half in the play-by-play era. That's since 97-98. Hits 70-49 at the break. Wembanyama, guard skills as a 7-foot whatever he is man. Wembanyama here. Loose ball gathers off the window. It's good. And they roll 41 and 18, youngest player in NBA history with back-to-back games of 40 and 15. Tim Legler joins me. And Legs, since this guy has been on our radar, right? Since we first learned of him, he's been a tantalizing prospect. But the idea of what he might be compared to the reality of what he is, how do you compare those?
Well, first of all, any player that's come into the league, with this kind of hype, and there's just a few really historically, to be able to live up to it and actually be more than you ever thought he could be this early in his career, it's really scary to think ultimately what his ceiling could be, because we're not close to that. He's so young. He's already added so much, but there's still a lot more there for him to grab. The thing that impressed me so much tonight, I think I saw more agility and variety of shot making offensively tonight than I've seen in any game that I've covered Victor Wembanyama since he's been in the league. It was just so impressive. Runners and floaters, fadeaways, of course, some of the power stuff at the rim, the constant release that he gives his guards, that even on a possession that's going nowhere, it comes down to the vertical space he provides to just bail out a possession. We saw all of that on display tonight. It's been going on pretty much the entire year. And it really actually looks like he's more comfortable even now than he was 6 weeks ago, probably.
I'm not being flippant when I ask this question. I'm being sincere. What does any team do to limit the manner in which this man impacts the game?
You've got one shot against him to just make him less efficient, and that is you have to have the type of personnel that's got the strength and enough size that you can force him out on the floor on his initial catch. If he's got an opportunity to run free and there's not a lot of contact and you don't have the type of personnel I'm describing, it is virtually impossible to stop him. When you see him start to get jammed up a little bit and at least you have some success against him, Scott, it's typically when you've been able to push him out on the floor and really make him wrestle you a little bit and struggle to catch it where he wants to initially. You've at least done your job to try to hopefully make him have a less efficient night. That's your best answer. But the problem is, Scott, this team is so deep and there are so many answers around him if you want to overload on him to that extent. They're a complete basketball team. They can beat you on either end of the floor, and they've got great depth.
I'm really curious your answer to this question. I'm curious to any question I ask you, but this one in particular. Wembanyama, it's fitting that he wears number 1. He's the most important player on that team. But in terms of their championship aspirations this year, who do you see as the second most important spur to this season's hopes?
Got to go with Stephon Castle. He's just so impressive. First of all, with the seriousness of his demeanor. He's just all business. I love his approach to the game. I love how seriously he takes the defensive end of the floor. And I don't know that you can appreciate sometimes if you're watching him on TV, when you see him in person and you see like the specimen that he is, the size and strength that he represents as your lead guard, it's a whole nother dimension that very few teams in this league have. He has grown so much offensively since he came into the league, and even how much he's grown just in this year. I had a stat on the game tonight where he's at 45% in his last 10 games from the three-point line. He was 50% again here tonight. If he's starting to add that, in addition to the physicality that he brings to the game by being in the paint all the time and his defensive prowess, now you've got another significant problem on your hands defensively. So I just think Castle's upside and what it represents. But look, here's the one thing remaining, Scott. Collectively, there's just not any playoff experience. You got Harrison Barnes, you got Luke Cornett. and he got De'Aaron Fox with 1 series under his belt. So that's the one thing remaining. How will all of these young guys handle their first taste of it?
And I intend to ask him about that when he joins us here in a bit. You had a conversation late in this blowout where Mike and you and Richard were discussing this MVP race. And there are compelling cases to be made for that and for first-team All-NBA. It's difficult to figure out who's the odd man out as it relates to that. How do you evaluate and choose what's most important in terms of who's most valuable this year, Tim?
Well, look, and Cade Cunningham's probably going to be removed because of the game limit,
right.
But I think there was half a dozen legitimate candidates in the mix. And I think what's going to happen is I think SGA, because he's the guy that is the reigning MVP, and I think people are going to look at his year, the fact that Oklahoma City ended up as the #1 seed overall. He had a more efficient season even than he did a year ago. I think some people that are torn because they're not sure might go in that direction, and then the other guys sort of split it up. But I think what you've seen, Victor Wembanyama has thrust himself into the conversation. Luka Doncic, with the way he's played over the last 6 weeks, has put himself in that situation. Jaylen Brown obviously deserves to be mentioned in it. And then you've got SGA and Jokic as well, 2 guys that have been there literally at the top every year for the last several. So I think there are a number of candidates. I don't know how it's going to go. I just wonder if some people go to the default of SGA, better year than he had, still the best record overall in the NBA, and he's the reigning MVP.
Understood. I don't think there's a wrong answer. It'll just be curious to find how people answer the question. Always enjoy the visits, Tim. Travel well. Be good until next time, okay?
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Always. The Spurs teams won each of the last 15 games that Victor Wembanyama has played in. Wemby averaging more than 25, 10, and 3 blocks per game in those wins. First player to post those numbers over a 15-game win streak since Shaquille O'Neal in 99-2000. Since the beginning of February, San Antonio, an NBA best 26-2. That's their most wins in any span of 28 games in the proud history of this franchise, something the Spurs never did despite being a dynastic team led by Pop, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. During the stretch, the Spurs have 2 separate winning streaks of 10 games, something they hadn't done in an entire season since 13-14. That year, the Spurs won an NBA title. Victor Wembanyama, kind enough to throw on the headset. Victor, it's Scott Van Pelt. Welcome back to the show. You joined me the night you were drafted. I'm happy to have you back after a brilliant performance again tonight. Interested in how this team has grown over the course of this year. You're on the verge of a 60-win season with who knows how many more to come. Have you sensed, Victor, a growing confidence and belief over the course of these last 10 games, since the All-Star break, since the fall? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, growing confidence, that's one thing. And I would emphasize the growing confidence in the little things that don't appear on the stat sheet from everybody, like the efforts that the only satisfaction you get is seeing somebody else on our team get success.
The thing about your group, the only thing that you lack is something that is mentioned anytime we look at the playoffs, and that's through the years, as you well know, history says, well, you kind of need to take your lumps. You need to have been there. The more I watch you, the more I think, I don't think so. I feel like you are all ready to go. What's your sense of that, the value of something that you all just don't have together yet?
Yeah, we don't have experience, right? Screw it. I mean, that's all we got. We're not going to play any different ways because it is this way. I mean, we're still going to play 100% and go to try to win this championship.
Sure.
Screw it.
Understood. I feel like that's the correct answer. You can't have the experience until you're going to get it, and you will here very shortly.
Yeah, right?
Tim just mentioned something to me, having watched this brilliant performance courtside, that he says he feels like maybe he sees you growing even more comfortable within the balance of the offense. Is that a reasonable assessment?
Yeah, it is. I mean, in my opinion, if I wasn't growing all the time, it would be not a failure, but a mistake on me. So it's just natural.
Sure, and I mean, we're seeing the percentages from 3 grow. It's amazing to witness it happening in real time. And something that happened recently, Victor, where you were asked about the MVP, and I loved how thoughtful you were in explaining why you believed that a vote for you made sense, and I agree with much of what you said. And I just appreciate that you won it, and it's something that matters to you. Some people act like, they don't care, they're indifferent. How important is that to you eventually, whether it's now or somewhere down the road, to be recognized as the best player in this league?
Oh, yeah, I do care deeply about it. And I think that all the greats, that are in the Hall of Fame or that are, in our mind, the best of all time, they have fought and grabbed everything they could grab early on in their career, And if I want to make my spot among the greats, I got to try to not miss any occasion I have to put my name up there.
I love it. Let me ask one last quick one on the way out, and I appreciate your time this evening. If there's any area, and watching it, I can't imagine what it would be, but if there's a specific area that I got to get better at this,